Well, hello and welcome everyone to the launch of the sanitation planning tool, or what we call the SanPlan. My name is Shapiro. I'm the environmental health team lead, senior WASH advisor, and the one who manages WASHPaLS and WASHPaLS 2 for USAID. One of the objectives of these projects is to turn research findings into actionable guidance and tools that will support the sector. And in fact, research conducted under WASHPaLS 1, under what we call the CLTS performance envelope research, indicated that it was possible to use existing data sets to identify local conditions that influence CLTS program outcomes. Based on this, we developed the SanPlan tool to exploit publicly available data on local conditions and merge it with geographical information systems in an effort to improve implementers' ability to analyze and apply information to design and more tailored and cost-effective rural sanitation intervention. As of today, we're officially launching the tool to the public. It's available for all partners to use in their programs, in design and planning. We will continue to support the tool under WASHPaLS 2 and encourage you to reach out to us with any questions or feedback as you use it in your work. The SanPlan tool was not developed alone. It was with great appreciation I offer our thanks to our partners like WaterAid and Global Communities that really helped us demonstrate the SanPlan tool's capabilities, and for all your collaboration and other partners' support in developing the tool this far. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Jessica Tribby from Acquia, who's part of the WASHPaLS project, to kick us off on the content. Over to you, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. As Jesse said, my name is Jessica Tribby. I'm with the Acquia WASHPaLS team. I just want to give a little bit of background about how we got here today. So as Jesse mentioned, under WASHPaLS, we did research on the performance envelope for CLTS, meaning what are the factors that might influence CLTS program success. We found that it was possible to identify those factors using publicly available data sets, but not surprisingly, these factors were often country or regionally specific. For example, we found factors, a set of factors might be different for Liberia than they are for Zambia. In parallel to our research efforts, colleagues at WaterAid, UNICEF, and Plan were working on a guidance document to provide implementers more tailored guidance on how to design sanitation interventions. And one of the steps in this guidance is to do a contextual analysis that actually categorizes communities into different typologies to help sort of design the right programmatic mix of sanitation interventions. And we, in discussions with WaterAid, we found that they were doing this categorization community by community through primary data collection, which was often costly and time consuming. So we asked ourselves, based on the research that we had done under the performance envelope, how might we leverage existing data sets for this type of analysis at scale? So today, Kara is going to show you the results of that, how we answered that question, and we'll talk about a few other use cases for how we might be able to leverage these data sets and use the sanitation planning tool. So with that, I'll pass it to Kara Stewart.
Hi, everybody. As Jessica mentioned, I'm Kara Stewart. I'm with the Acquia Institute and WASHPaLS 1. And I was involved in the development and launch of the SanPlan tool. So I'm here just to introduce you and give you a quick tour of the tool today. So the tool is built really to give the decision-making power to the user to develop highly localized contextual spatial analyses of the areas that they may want to work. And the idea is to make it a really user-friendly environment that doesn't require any GIS expertise, but brings together a lot of really useful, really high-resolution data sets that they may not have access to otherwise. So here in the image is a sneak preview of what the tool looks like in Mozambique. And this is just giving you a screenshot of what the rural typology layer looks like that we developed, as Jessica mentioned, to go along with the Rethinking Rural Sanitation guidance. So this is the 4-color map that splits the areas into rural remote, rural on road, rural mixed, and urban to give a quick analysis of accessibility and remoteness. So in the tool, we have 13 standard data sets that apply across the countries. We split them into accessibility, water and sanitation, socioeconomic, and health categories, and they're all listed here on the slide. As you use the tool, you can access each of these data sets through a series of filters, which is depicted here in the image. Here we're constricting the map to men's educational attainment between 2 to 4 years old in Mozambique. And as you can see, the map reacts and shows you the areas that fit that criteria. And the idea is that you can use any of these layers that's important to you as a user, and you could use them in combination. There's 5 primary analysis features of the tool. We've already talked a little bit about the first 2, which is the rural typology classification, which we have down to the 1 kilometer level. And then there's also the 5 kilometer pixel area contextual analysis, where you can use those filters to target specific areas. That same type of analysis is also available at the administrative level. So here depicted in Ghana, that's at the district level. We also have the ability for users to upload community locations and to see them situated on the map and get a little bit of trend analysis information. And then the 5th feature is an in development or beta feature showing all estimated settlement areas through a little boundary layer. And this is to guide users who may not have a list of latitudes and longitudes already ready to go. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kind of show you the tool through a live demo. So when you go to the website, you'll start on this landing page. And this map here shows the 16 countries that we currently have loaded into the tool. So you can access the map pages by clicking on the interactive map, or you can use the various drop-downs situated across the site. Down below, we have some related research publications that came out of WASHPaLS 1 that have to do with this targeting favorability specifically for CLTS. And so if you happen to have a country that was studied under WASHPaLS 1, there's some really handy information in these publications to guide you in where you may want to target your programming. So I want to start off really quickly by just showing you the datasets overview page. We have a number of publicly available datasets all linked into the tool. For all of those datasets, we have citation information, links to the raw data, any information that you might need. And then if you scroll down towards the bottom, we also have a few custom-built datasets that we either augmented from the raw data or kind of combined into our own dataset. So those are described here, and including that rural typology layer that we've already discussed a few times. So this has a little bit of background information on how that layer was produced. If you look through these, you'll notice that a number of the data sets come from the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. We just wanted to point out that is a data set that was built off of DHS and mixed data sets, as well as country surveys and census. And I just wanted to highlight that because a number of our data sets are from that source, so it's kind of a major source for us. We also have an FAQ page that has some guidance to get you started, but please do, if you do use the tool and you have additional questions or things that should be listed here, please do reach out to us. We have an email address here, and we'd love to keep building and make this FAQ a living document. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and show you what a map page looks like. So I'm going to start us off in Liberia. Whenever you enter into a map page, you'll start off on the rural typology level at the 5 kilometer resolution. If you click on set resolution over here on the left toolbar, you can move between the 1 by 1 kilometer and the district level. And so you can move freely between those, and any analyses that you do within one resolution will be saved during your session. But if you switch countries, you will lose your progress. So if you want to see a different variable kind of depicted in the legend with the color schemes, you can choose anything from the drop down here in the legend on the bottom right. So I've just selected travel time to cities, and you'll see that the colors of the pixels update and our legend values update. So we can use the legend and the colors to kind of guide what we want to filter. So for example, if we want to filter out all these low areas with that are close to cities, for example, I can say, okay, well, I want to take out this first boundary, so I'm going to restrict time to cities filter and say I want everything above, say, 150 or so, and you can use the filters that way. You can also use the filters irrespective of what is shown in the legend. So even though we're looking at time to cities, I can also, go to water and sanitation, for example, and say, I want to look at everything, below 60, for example, and it will react. And it's a combination now of those two filters. At any time, you can reset your filters using the Reset Filters button. And you can do a deeper dive as well. So say you're a government level employee, or you have a specific RFP that targets a specific district. You can use a district drop down and kind of get a little bit deeper in here. So I'm going to just pick one, and it will zoom in on the district, and it will automatically filter the map. Any filters that you have already on will be kind of respected in this zoom in. And so we can continue to use the filters here as well. And it will update. And then once you have, the areas that you want to target, like say, for example, you want areas with high open defecation and maybe areas that are rural remote, you can do that. And if these are the areas that fit all my criteria and I want to see where are people living within these areas, you can use the Show Estimated Settlement Boundaries option here in the Settlements tab. Toggle that on. It will give you a quick warning just to let you know that these are estimates and they're not necessarily administratively recognized communities. It's just kind of based on satellite imagery built up areas. It's just to give you an idea of where people are living. And so in this area, it's pretty remote. So we only have a few that are popping up. If you want to get more information, you can click on a pixel and you will get, some identifying information. Whatever you're showing in your legend will show up here in the initial pop-up, but you can see more and you can find all of the data from all 13 layers pulled for this 5 by 5 kilometer square. Additionally, you can click directly on a community or a settlement, I should say, and you can get some restricted information on this. We restricted the table to only show the really high resolution data sets to kind of keep it a little bit more accurate. So anything that's less than 1 kilometer in resolution will be shown in the See More page. You can also download data for all the remaining settlement areas and the remaining 5 by 5 kilometer areas here. If you wanted to get a closer look at these built up areas, we've added this toggle here to remove the data layer. And so this will keep the settlement layer on, but it will remove, the data that's laying on top of it. So you can actually zoom in and kind of explore the satellite imagery underneath the data. So that just gives you a quick kind of rundown of the tool. We're going to start by showing you a couple use case demonstrations, and then we can come back and do some open discussion and question and answer. So I'm going to quickly introduce our first guest speaker. So this is a recorded demo from Soka Mok from WaterAid Cambodia. Soka is a program manager who works on system strengthening at the provincial and district levels in Cambodia. So he really focuses on the coordination between programming efforts and local governments. And so WaterAid, as a co-author of the Rethinking Rural Sanitation Guidance, actually uses those typologies that we talked about in their work. So they developed an MWater tool where they go community by community and use the survey to assign a typology. And they have projects rolling out in Niger, Rwanda, Cambodia, and Nigeria. And so Soka wanted to use the tool to get an idea of how the bulk classification works so that he doesn't have to put in as much manpower and staff time into this initial classification of the rural typologies. So he's going to go through how they might use data that they already have, since they've already been working with local governments. They're kind of coming to the table with a list of communities, and he's going to show us how you can use the tool to extract the rural typology at those locations. So we can go ahead and start that.
After this, I and Kara will go to provide you a detail on how we experience to implement the SanPlan tool. Just a quick provide you an example. Small data set that we have. Basically, we pick one district in Kampong Speu. We pick oral area, one of the remote area that we implement right now. We have here that we have this from the tool that we have. And then we will show you, can you go to the tool? Yeah, as you can see, here is the Cambodia map. So you can see that there are different color. So this different color show you the different typology that the tool have already provide. So you go to set resolution and then click 1 kilometer because you want to really understand the rural typology. And then we go to setting settlement community, upload the data. So the data that we show you. And then what you can see here in the community, all the white dot here is the 11 community that you can see in the exact document. And then if you click there on each dot, and then all information in each community will be provided from the tool. So that we have commune name, we have district name, and then we have population, including sanitation access rate, and also household number in the commune as well. And then you go to export the data. Download. Here you can see what are the difference. So what are the difference you can see in the column K. It's very helpful for us, especially for the program implementer. We can know that in the 11 community, which community that fall under rural, remote, and different typology that tool have support us to identify. And then we will bring this information to also to verify with our local government. So I can pause for now, and let's over to Kara to continue. Thank you.
Great. So I wanted to just give a little bit more information about this exported data set. So as Soka mentioned, he was primarily interested in this rural typology kind of addition to the data set in column K. All of the rest of this data was included in his upload, and so it did not come directly from the tool. The minimum that you need to do this particular upload-download feature is a latitude and longitude columns. You don't need this extra data, but we wanted to show how that could populate into the tool, through this pop-up. So that's why we included it here. The download includes the rural typology at the 1 kilometer level, which is Soka was mainly interested in, but it also scrapes the data from all the resolutions loaded. And so at the 5 kilometer level, there's another tab, and all of the data from all the data loaded is pulled here at the location of the lat longs for each of these communities. Additionally, it's available at the district level. As you'll note, the test district here was only from Oral, so all of the values are the same since they're just district averages. But if you had uploaded, for example, a more diverse data set, you would get different district averages in this administrative boundary tab. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go right into our second use case demo. So Jessica will introduce Nicole.
Thanks, Kara. Our next demonstration of the tool, so in the last demonstration, you saw Soka using SanPlan for program planning. And in this next demo, we're going to have Nicole Helm, who is the Senior Monitoring and Evaluation and Learning Specialist from Global Communities. He will show us how the tool might be used at the proposal stage. So before even getting into program planning, just trying to sort of initially target districts for a proposal and provide some data, initial data, doing some formative assessment on those in the proposal stage. So with that, we'll go to the video from Nicole.
And yeah, just a really simple use case of how we might use this at the outset of programming to look at how we would target specific communities and with specific interventions. So in this example, again, theoretical, and in this exercise, I'd be working with, our Ghana team, our WASH specialists, et cetera. But so for a funder's RFA that's seeking applications for sanitation programming in up to 30 districts in northern Ghana, which are falling off track for meeting WASH development goals. So USAID has prioritized in their request that the geographic scope should include USAID Feed the Future Zone of Influence, 17 districts and 4 regions. And the intervention should target 4 densely populated and growing population areas. And also Global Communities prioritizes areas with high need, low levels of sanitation access and use, and low levels of safe drinking water access. For the ease of this demo, we'll focus on our geographic scope to the Upper East region. And in this region, the USAID priority districts are Baku Municipal, Baku West, and Garu Kampane. So first, I just want to collect some useful data about these districts. I'm going to look at district averages, which may be important to quote in our proposal for prioritizing between districts. Therefore, I'll download these district level data. So I'm already on the Ghana page. So on this page, I'm going to set resolution to district, so I can see it at the district level. And then from the drop down, I'm going to select the districts of interest. So in this case, selecting, I'm going to scroll alphabetically. So Baku Municipal, Baku West, and then Garu. And this is just for practicality's sake for this demo. So then I can click on any of these districts and I can see more in terms of the specific data available to me in each of these districts. And then I can also, if I want to, go over to data export, and I'll be able to download these data sets for all 3 of my selected districts. So this is going to give me the basic district level information that I might want in Excel file for some of our discussions. So next, what I want to do is actually target areas for specific interventions, perhaps CLTS, and based on the criteria of the RFA. So, historically, CLTS is more successful when applied in more remote areas. So for this exercise, I'm going to set my resolution to the 5x5 area. And then I'm going to look at accessibility to refine the areas that I want to look at. And for this exercise, I'm going to focus on rural remote and rural on road. So I'm going to get rid of rural mixed and urban. And then I'm going to go, so once I have a sense of those geographic areas, then I'm going to go over here to my legend, and I'm going to get a sense of the population. So down here, I got my key, and I can go ahead and look at and get a sense of the population for the area and get a sense of the distribution. So per the USAID RFA, we're going to want to look at densely populated areas with growing populations, and yet CLTS has been shown to work best in some smaller villages. Therefore, I think this is where we'd really have a conversation as a team and bring in several different voices to the conversation. But this would help us to visualize what we're looking at in terms of that overall distribution. So, but for this, I'm going to go over to socioeconomic, and I'm going to set the population at 500 to about 3,000. So that's going to, give us a higher population, maybe indicative of increasing population density, and keeping it below the 3K, maintaining a relatively small overall population. And then I'm going to swing back over here, and I'm going to then look, in terms of vulnerability, I'm going to start to look at open defecation. So I'm going to go to my legend and put it on practicing open defecation. So again, this is going to give me an overall sense of the distribution of OD in the remaining areas. And this, again, is a great sort of visualization for the team to be able to discuss what our parameters might be, or to zone in more specifically on some of these data sets to look at, our different options. And so once I get a sense of that, I'm going to actually go ahead and filter for it by going to water and sanitation, looking at the population practicing OD, and I'm going to set it to greater than 70, again, for the purposes of this activity, but this is when we'd have some in-depth team conversations. And then also, I'm going to want to look at reliance on improved drinking water. And again, team conversation, but for this, I'm going to set it to greater than 10%. And what's helpful here is because I could see the distribution previously, I get a sense of how much refinement that's really going to give me. So then, this is showing me my 5x5 squares, right? So I'm already seeing sort of generally where I'm going to be focused. But then if I wanted to see the specific communities, I can go over here to settlements and communities. I'm going to say, yes, I understand that it's still being demoed. And so I can actually see the different communities. And so it's using the 5x5 squares, but you can see which communities overlap with those 5x5 squares. And then I can go ahead, and if I want to, download this data set. And basically that's going to download the data sets for the remaining 8, so that I have 8 little 5x5 squares, an estimated 101 settlement areas. And so really this exercise has informed me that my CLTS efforts in this region should focus a lot on Baku West, I believe is up here, and northern Galatampane, and the approximately 100 settlement areas best matching my criteria. So this really helps to sort of facilitate, I think, team conversations and be able to refine our parameters for selecting settlements and understand distributions in different districts. Now, if I want to go ahead and say, well, let's look at sanitation marketing, where we might want to actually target this type of intervention, we can go back up and look at accessibility and change it to rural mixed. And rural mixed areas account for peri-urban and small towns of greater than 5,000 people. And these areas have been recommended for sanitation marketing. And so if I actually want to go ahead and change my parameters, then I can say on my socioeconomic, I can change my population estimate to greater than 3,000, right? So I'm looking at larger populations. And then, when you do change what you're looking at in terms of geography and population, also looking at, modifying our parameters. I think for this exercise, keeping open defecation where it is makes sense, but because drinking water access is a little bit improved in some of these areas, then we might change these parameters a little bit and open this up a little bit to give us a little bit more of an area to look at. And so then we can see here, and again, I can download this data set if I want to for these specific areas. And this is going to give me 9 little 5x5 focus areas and 189 settlement areas. And so this exercise has helped me to see that sanitation marketing efforts in this region should focus on Central Baku West and Garo Tampane districts and focus in on 159 settlement areas that match my criteria for sanitation marketing.
At the
Great.
end, but
So
you just did with sanitation marketing.
Okay, so with that, we want to open it up to your questions. So we've given just a couple of examples of how SanPlan might be used for rural sanitation programming. I'm sure that many of you have other ideas already about how this might be useful for your programming. So as Jesse mentioned, this goes live today. After this webinar, we'll open up the website for anyone to use. We plan to keep this live as a pilot project under WASHPaLS 2 for about the next year. And during this period, we really want to hear from you. So we want to hear how you're using the tool. If you find a problem, we definitely want to hear about it. So please let us know. But we also want to hear if it's useful for you and how you're using it and how you're using it in your programs. Additionally, if you're interested in getting some support from our team to implement this in your program planning, or if you'd like to see an additional country supported, please email us, and we'd be happy to have discussions and work with you on that. So with that, we will go over to the Q&A. I'm gonna just see what we have queued up here and pass some questions back to Kara and the team. Kara, first question that I think it'll be helpful if you answer for everyone is from Adrian in the chat. So she says, how does SanPlan harmonize with JMP sanitation indicators?
Okay, great. So a lot of the data sets that we use pull raw data from the same sources, like from census data and DHS data. However, the JMP data is available at the national level, and so we really targeted high resolution data at the subnational level to be pulled into our tool. So we don't actually link to any published JMP data, but a lot of it is sourced from the same raw data sets.
Great, and maybe a follow-on to that, Kara, I noticed a number of people had asked about how frequently the data in the tool can be updated, and if there's any plans to update that in the future.
Yeah, so it's going to be a living website that will adapt to new data sets that come out. If data sets are never updated, then they'll eventually be we recommend at least kind of folding them out of the tool over time. And so it's kind of a data set by data set question. Some of these data that we know are updated annually. some of the sources that go into like the world typology layer, for example, we recommend to be updated annually. Those raw data sets are actually updated much more often than that. But some of the WASH related data sets are not planning on being updated anymore. So they will need to be phased out, and the new manager should, or whoever's managing the site at whatever time should be, kind of checking out new data sets to bring into the tool to kind of keep it useful for sanitation programming.
Great. I'm going to put the next question to Jesse. So Jesse, we've had a question on the duration of this project and what this project looks like next 5 years under WASHPaLS 2 and in the future.
Yeah, so I didn't clarify in the intro, but WASHPaLS 1 is actually ending this month. This tool was developed under that project. But fortunately, we have a WASHPaLS 2 project which has just begun this year and will continue for the next 5 years. And it'll be transferred under that umbrella. And so we'll definitely keep the tool running for the rest of the year while collecting feedback on use, as Jessica and Kara requested, and chart out the future of the tool, but potentially at least for the next 5 years.
Great. Thanks, Jesse.
I saw somebody, Jessica, if I can I'm going to pull a screen share to the tool really quick. I saw that somebody asked kind of to see how that the information on the data sets should be a little bit more visible. I just wanted to also point out that we have, I skipped over it in the tour, but we have these information icons here that have the information from the dataset overview page. So you don't need to go and search high and low for the information on the dataset. So that information is readily available here. But I see your comment also about including some of that information in the download as well. And I will note, we didn't show what a full download looks like, separate from the upload, but I will also note that the download file does come with a notes tab that has information on, what filters were set before you did the download to kind of make sure that it's clear, that the data set is not encompassing, the entire country, that some filtering was applied, and that applies to the data in the rest of the workbook. So just wanted to clarify that.
Great. Seeing a lot of questions. Jeff, I'm just wondering if you have any questions you want to pull up for Kara that we haven't gotten to yet. I know there's a lot we haven't gotten to yet.
There's not, but what I was actually just gonna suggest on this question of the updating of the WASH data, particularly I think it would be helpful. I think it would be helpful to talk about the IHME data set, perhaps with a bit more detail, because it is so central in our we do rely on it quite heavily. So and it gives an indication. It gives an it gives an indication of the frequency with which it'll be updated.
Okay, sure. Sorry, Jeff. I didn't know if you were going to give the detail or if you were waiting for me to take over. Yeah, so I think the easiest thing to do would be to reference the paper. We linked right to it there. But essentially, it's the lower burden of disease or lesser burden of disease project. They came out with estimates that spanned every year from the year 2000 to 2017. And so what we have loaded into the tool for all of these data sets that pull from that source or that project are the 2017 data sets. And so those we know are not going to be continually updated, although the project is open source. So someone could come along and update those, in which case we will happily keep them in the tool. But yeah, they're gridded data sets. The raw resolution is right about 5 kilometer resolution, which is why we kind of used 5 kilometer as our base resolution, since we pulled so heavily from that source. Is there anything else that maybe I'm skipping over, Jeff?
There's a context question that's just come up from via Kit, which about these mixed contexts. I think it's helpful. One of the first questions we got, Kara, before you began, was about whether this was strictly a rural sanitation tool. I think it'd be helpful to to talk about spatial resolution and what what that means in terms of the kinds of context we're working in, right?
So we, a lot of the use cases that we've demoed on this call and on past calls with partners have focused on CLTS, but we really tried to make this as open-ended as possible. And so if you do zoom into urban areas or rural mixed areas, as Nicole pointed out in her demo, we think it can also be really helpful for targeting other practices like sanitation marketing and things like that. I think we can all also appreciate that there's uses beyond even water and sanitation in this tool. It's really kind of harnessed on the data sets that are loaded. And so we selectively chose the highest resolution data sets possible so that you can really get into those urban and peri-urban areas and start to see some variation in the results and make some programming decisions in those areas as well.
And I should add, one of the challenges of this tool development, and for which Kara and her team really, I think require a lot of recognition, is the challenge of working across data sets of differing resolutions, right? So we have some that are, this IHME data set, remember, is derived from DHS and JMP data, and it's global, or it's continental in scale. And then there are other data sets that are, that get us down to 5 kilometers, 1 kilometer, and then, the settlement, the information on basically where people live in rural areas. And we use data that came out of the Grid 3 project, but that's much higher resolution. I think that's probably, those are public data sets, not grid data sets. Or actually, I'm sorry, Kara, correct me. Do we rely on them both, the gridded and the object tree?
So where we have Grid 3 has released these settlement mapping data sets in the entire continent of Africa. And so in the African countries that are supported, we use the Grid 3 data sets. We do have a couple countries in Southeast Asia that are not yet supported by Grid 3. And so we have a very similar process that we've employed to kind of custom make those settlement maps.
Yeah, and I see Tom is asking about the source. The source and quality of the data, that was also front and center in the design process. So it may not have been clear in the initial demo, but there's detailed metadata for all of the data layers and links to where you can see what's being mapped, and where we derived some map analysis from those inputs. That's also so, but it's a great question. And that question from Tino. Yeah, we've been talking about I'll put in the chat the source data set for those WASH related data.
Yeah, I see a question. Oh, go ahead.
Kara, earlier we had a question on whether or not when someone uploads their own data set to the tool, whether or not that data is then visible to other users. Maybe you can address that.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that we've kicked around a lot. Having some sort of public repository of data, I think, is a very exciting long-term goal or stretch goal. It's not something that we were able to accomplish in kind of this pilot phase of the tool. it takes on a lot more complexity of, user logins. We need a management team to kind of verify the quality of all of the uploaded data sources before we send them out to the public. And so it's a much larger task, but it's definitely something that's, been thought about. And it also kind of links to, I saw another question in here about linking to government data sets. And so I think it kind of follows a similar answer, where it would be wonderful to be able to bring in government data and even link potentially to those governments that have, automated online systems. But the diversity in the data and, having it be country by country, completely different situation, made it kind of impossible at this stage of the program. But if this project continues and has a big team behind it, I think that's something that would be really useful for the sector. We have gotten some, kind of volunteers from the sector that would be willing to share their data. So it's really exciting to have those conversations. But at this point, it's not included.
Sarah, a really great question from Connie in the chat. She says, in the Rethinking Rural Sanitation Guidance, there's another category on difficult context, covering challenging physical terrain, fragile contexts, flood-prone areas. Is there a functionality within the tool to flag where a context might have had those additional challenges?
Yeah, that was also something that we tried really hard to see if we could incorporate. At this stage of the project, we had to kind of put blinders on and only focus on data sets that were globally available, or at least multi-country in nature, so that we could apply the same data set across the tool. We just didn't have the bandwidth to put in kind of country-specific data sets, even though we know that there are some that would be useful, particularly for highlighting difficult context. There's a good data sets, for example, in Cambodia. They've done a good job of mapping difficult contexts in flood-prone areas, but because we couldn't kind of find a larger data set that was reliable on those types of indicators, we did not include them in the current version. But the ability to customize each country's page is on the table for future development for sure.
Yeah, and on that note, I see a number of questions about specific data sets. Jerome, you raised question about using data on nutrient content in water, which sounds very interesting. I mean, certainly we are not aware of every possible data set that's out there. So if you have information on data sets that are global or even regionally available that you think might be useful to see in the tool, we encourage everyone to send us an email on that. I'll drop the email for our support contact in the chat, in the main group chat again, but we would love to hear from you with more information on those data sets.
And if I could just add there, with a question like that, it's the different countries, there may be different countries that have, for which very detailed water quality data, GIS, specific water quality data, like on nitrogen or phosphorus or eutrophication, may be available. This was very much driven by an effort to support rural sanitation programming and planning, and to do that across the countries for which the application was developed. So. That was sort of part of where the particular operated, that was how that was.
Rural and urban sanitation program.
Following up on that question, I saw an earlier question from Lauren asking about Aquaya's separate work on AI for social good, and if there's any link between the two as we look at urban contexts and getting better spatial resolution in urban contexts.
I'm happy to take that. So we are working on a kind of a pilot project to use high resolution satellite imagery to pick up low income areas And we're piloting that in 3 secondary cities in Kenya. So it's a very small scale model development project that we're working on. If that results in a high quality model that can be run over many cities, it would be great to link that into SanPlan. But we are specifically looking essentially at mapping those low income kind of neighborhood region boundaries. And so that's what that project's focused on. And we're hoping that it's successful, but it's still we're still in the baseline model development phase. So we'll have to wait and see on that one.
So no official links between the projects, but of course, as I said, anytime we find relevant data sets or useful data sets for the tool, we want to hear from folks on those, and we can look for opportunities to incorporate them.
Right.
I want to speak to just the recent poverty data, the patient of mapping poverty and how that could at some point be incorporated.
Yeah, definitely. We have a number of data sets kind of on our list that have been kind of referred to us. Things like, it would be great to see soil type. It would be great to see poverty. Poverty has been high on our priority list from the beginning, and only recently, those maps became available. And so it's definitely, on our minds for future upgrade of the tool to include that. And just a little bit of background, I guess that what Jeff's referring to is a relative wealth index map that's global in nature, and it estimates those wealth indexes down to the 2.4 kilometer level, and is available in all of our study countries.
Great. I think that we've covered most of them. I know we didn't get to everyone's questions.
Yeah, I mean, there was this last question about from Jerome about a citizen science data collection effort, and certainly checking out that resource will be really helpful. But I think that there is a link to SanPlan insofar as the tool was designed so that programmers, implementers, potentially government officials and institutions as well they can upload their own data and conduct analysis based on their but no, with respect to incorporating citizen science, citizen measurements and so forth, that's probably for version 2.x is my guess, right?
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. So there are kind of two different ways to think about this user uploaded data. I addressed earlier, why it would be challenging for us in our pilot phase to open up user data to other users in sort of a more of a repository like environment. But there's also an opportunity to, allow for more than just a CSV upload for your own private session. So if you have a data set that you want to use in your programming, maybe you're in Cambodia and you have that really good floodplain data set and you want to load it in as a shapefile or something like that. Those features are easier to add, just for your kind of your own incorporation into the tool. It's something that we don't support currently, but I just wanted to plug that. Please let us know if there are particular features like that would be really useful, or if it had this, I would use it for that. That kind of feedback is really what we are hoping to get to kind of assess the demand for these types of features, because they are a bit complex and expensive to implement, but we want to know useful. So please let us know.
Great. With that, I think we'll pass it back to Jesse just to close us out. And Kara, if you can put up the slide with the contact information and the website again, that'd be great.
Great, thanks. And thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate your time and interest in the tool. And it is now public for you to go use and try. And we really thank you so much for all the questions and feedback you've provided today. And we are asking you to continue to reach out to us if you have any additional feedback, questions, if you would like help using the tool, please do not hesitate to reach out. You can see the tool web address here on the slide. So it's now open for business. And again, thank you all for joining. We really appreciate it and hope to hear from you all. Take care.